Hello and welcome everyone to EMA's Health and Safety Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. And today our guest is Seb James. Seb, thank you so much for volunteering to come in today. You were kind of voluntold, weren't you?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little, yeah. But we really appreciate you being here. Before we get into today's subject, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey into your current role as a health and safety professional?
I mean, you've probably heard it a few times. Health and safety professionals tend to fall into the role. I originally started out in cardiac rehab. So I studied clinical exercise physiology with the University of Auckland and spent a number of years working in a clinical setting. Pivoted into occupational health. So I was doing on-site health monitoring, drug testing, first aid training, and then moved into health and safety. And that's when I started working for Gallagher.
Right, and Gallagher used to be called, just for our listeners who may not know.
Yeah, so Gallagher Insurance, previously known as Crombie Lockwood. Well-known New Zealand brand in terms of insurance. And we've got a really good risk consulting team, which I'm part of.
And so do you work with set clients or are you, do new clients come and approach you and like, oh, we think we've got a challenge here, and then you would be sent out? Or have you got, these are my 50 clients for the year? How does that work out?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We operate in a supporting role in addition to insurance. Health and safety is one of those areas where you cannot get insurance for health and safety related prosecutions. And so Gallagher's always looking for ways to support their clients over and above just insurance. And so that's where we come in as the risk consulting team.
Yeah, cool. So how long have you been in this role for?
I actually just got promoted.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done.
So not very long.
I'm
currently the head of risk engineering and consulting at Gallagher. And previously I was the head of health and safety consulting.
Right. And you've been with Gallagher for 2 or 3 years now, I think.
5 years total.
5 years. Yep. Cool.
Yep. And in this role, like a month.
Right. And you've drunk the Kool-Aid, right? Sorry to use the Kool-Aid, but people say that if a lot of people that sort of eventually wind up in health and safety, that's it. They're there for life. And that's the feeling I have about you, yeah?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a big health and safety nerd. Self-confessed. Yeah. Very, very interested in it and really passionate about it. So
that's not to say to our viewers that a health and safety professional is a nerdy job. That's not how we would describe it. But no, and we first met each other when you joined up on our diploma course a couple of years back.
I did, yeah. So I was expanding my horizons and making sure that I knew what I was talking about. Right. So it was nice to come to the EMA and kind of expand some of the skill sets that I had.
And also your network too.
And the network, which has been really good too. Yeah. No, it's been incredible.
So what are we going to talk about today?
So today I put forward the topic of talking about critical risks.
That's pretty topical at the moment, yeah?
It is, yeah. It's something that is obviously being discussed with the health and safety reforms.
Yep.
And there has been a lot of debate, both in the academic sense with the health and safety professionals, and obviously in a policy level with small businesses and the ministers who are looking after that.
Yeah. So I'm not a health and safety professional. So just for me and maybe a couple of other listeners that may not be fully up with what's happening, a bill was submitted to Parliament, proposed or whatever, and what are the changes of that bill suggesting?
So there are a few different goals in regards to the bill, and not really here to talk about that in particular, but the one of the challenges that the bill aims to address is that health and safety can be really, really quite complicated for small, medium businesses. They don't necessarily have a head count to justify a dedicated health and safety manager.
Right, so that person will have other responsibilities as well as looking after aspects of health and safety,
100%. But they're still exposed to the same risks as every other business. So one of the proposed changes was to allow small businesses, SMEs, to focus on managing just the critical risks.
Okay.
Which then begs the question, what is a critical risk?
So that's the question I've got for you right now.
100%.
How do we know that it's a critical risk? How is your profession, are people in the field of health and safety clear about what that actually means?
Well, the answer is no, not really. There was a huge amount of debate when this came out initially, because the people that there's a lot of people that I work with and communicate with. They were all asking the question, what is the definition of a critical risk? It wasn't that clear in the previous legislation. And so all of a sudden you start thinking about, okay, what does this look like for a small business? There has since been a revised, or the bill's been released with a list of critical risks.
Okay.
But I found it really interesting digging into it as a professional, because small businesses, it can be a very useful tool, I think, to engaging with them on these topics.
Yep.
They can feel quite overwhelmed trying to address every aspect of health and safety, from your slips to trips, working at heights, cars, electricity, power tools, and it can be really hard to focus on what they actually need to address.
So this change wants them then to focus on what's critical, but their challenge will be working out what actually is critical.
Yeah, and when I'm having these conversations with businesses, it's really interesting to see where their mind goes first.
Yeah, can you give us some examples without obviously naming any of the businesses?
Of course. We'll go into businesses, and one of the questions I'll ask is, okay, what do you see as your critical risks in the business? This is pre-definition. They don't have an understanding of it.
Yep.
No way I like to describe it as stickies or stuff that can kill you.
Okay, right.
This was a manufacturing business. They had warehouses, quite well known. And, oh no, all our products are really small. We don't really have any critical risks.
So there are implications that they don't have any activities where if something went wrong, someone could die.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, of course, the next question I had was, do you have any forklifts?
Okay.
And he said, yeah, we've got two of them. We've got an electric forklift and we've got an LPG forklift.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, you've got a critical risk right there.
And how so? I mean, again, I think I get it, but a forklift is of critical risk because of the fuel source, or?
So the way that I usually approach it is looking at stats, incident rates.
Yep.
And there's some really good resources. So obviously WorkSafe have got a fantastic resource on the number of serious incidents and fatalities. They've got a dashboard which breaks that down in a very digestible format.
Yep.
For people who are not necessarily engaged in health and safety as a core business. One of the main risks there is vehicles, vehicle-related accidents, and mobile plant, which I think equates for, in the order around 50% of all fatalities since 2002.
And mobile plant, so that's forklifts, but also the elevated platforms, stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow. So vehicles and mobile plant, and then I think a large portion of that is off-road vehicles, so quad bikes and farm-related accidents. Great resource. ACC obviously has got a lot of stats as well. Yep. So if you were a business and you were looking at, okay, what are my critical risks? You can go to these resources and you can look at and see, if there was going to be a serious accident on site, what are we looking at? So number one's vehicles. We've got falls from height. We've got plant and machinery. Yep. And so you can simplify your approach.
So with this one organisation, this manufacturing plant you were talking about, when you pointed out that, they've got two forklifts. Well, there you go. There's a critical risk. Did the penny drop? Were they like, okay. Oh, well, good. Well, we've also got this and we've got that and we've got that.
Yeah. I think this is what I find so interesting and exciting about working with small businesses. People have got really good intentions.
Yep.
And they want to make sure that the work that they're doing is safe and they want to do the right thing. And so all you really need to do is, there is an education piece around that, is getting them on the same page around what is actually a risk to their business and why they're doing certain things in regards to health and safety, why they're documenting things. Because if they don't know the why, then it can feel like a tick box exercise.
Yep.
And so, that critical risk discussion I had with this particular business owner, he definitely cared. He was out mowing the lawns around this warehouse just before we arrived. He was very, very much involved in this business.
Yep.
And so putting it or phrasing it in that way that, in your business, you have got or you have activities that are accountable for almost 50% of the fatalities
in the country,
in New Zealand,
not in the business, but in
New Zealand, since 2002.
Yep.
It really did kind of put it in perspective. It was like, actually, it's not that safe.
Yeah.
And we could start talking about, okay, what controls do you have in place to mitigate this critical risk? Because that's the other side of the coin.
So firstly, work out what risks are critical, and then how are you going to be mitigating them?
100%. And they had a lot of controls in place which they couldn't necessarily document, or they didn't have any way of demonstrating that they were doing those.
Okay.
So they had in-house training for their staff.
Yep.
They had forklift licenses, which they maintained quite regularly, but there was no register for that.
Okay.
The forklifts were maintained.
Yep.
They had exclusion zones in their warehouse where the forklifts were operating.
And this is all really good practice, right?
Great practice, but a lot of this was informal. So although there were exclusion zones around these forklifts, no documented traffic management plan.
Right.
So for a small business, if an accident did happen, and they do happen,
Yep.
and they needed to then stand up in court and obviously advocate on their behalf,
That we've done this, we do this, but they've got no records.
it gets really, really hard.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
You mentioned the word sticky before, right? So stuff that can kill you.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything that can kill you has a critical risk associated with it. What about other stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Where you wouldn't necessarily die, but it would still be considered a critical risk.
Yeah, well, this is where there's been a lot of debate.
Yep.
Because there are some risks that are, I can't remember what, I think it was like Schedule 2A of the proposed reform.
Yep.
Don't quote me, that's probably wrong. But they have a list, and there are some interesting additions to that list. I think one of them was work-related noise-induced hearing loss.
Okay.
So,
You don't die, but you're impaired and impaired for life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where the conversation starts to get a little bit more academic, and you can have people shouting till they're blue in the face on various sides of the spectrum in the health and safety world as to what would justify a critical risk. Right. And it is important. Don't get me wrong. I used to do hearing screening in workplaces.
Yep.
And I think that permanent disability definitely could be counted as a critical risk.
Yeah. It's serious harm, right? It's just because it happens over such a long period of time, it's not noticeable. And it's something that, one of my colleagues, Paul Jarvie, likes to emphasize is, it's OC health.
Yeah.
It needs to be considered as well. It's
absolutely.
Safety important, absolutely, 100%, but also the occupational health side of things. So did you, or again, you're going into your clients' workplaces and you've got a wonderful first question. What are your critical risks? Have you had clients that are like, yeah, I can tell you exactly what they are. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, we do. We do have conversations with clients that are able to point those out very quickly, which is good. They have very, very strong health and safety maturity in terms of their understanding.
Yeah. It's a nice way of putting it, health and safety maturity.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's more around reassuring them that they're on the right track and they have considered all the variables.
Yep. Sometimes
there might be minor gaps. But it's really nice having those conversations because they're doing a lot better than they realize.
Yep.
Sometimes you do need to redirect them. They can focus on the wrong things, or not the wrong things. They're focusing or hyper-focusing on risks that perhaps don't represent as much of a risk.
Can you give us an example? So something that, it is still a risky thing, but wouldn't maybe be classified as a critical risk. If you can just give us an example for our viewers. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's a good question. Probably not a good example, but like for an electrician, they'll spend a lot of time talking about their electrical related risks.
Okay.
They'll have JSAs, they'll have risk registers, they'll be documenting, and they'll be having pre and post tests, and they'll have a lot of records relating to that. If they're going to have a very serious accident, it's probably going to be driving to a job,
as opposed to with electricity involved.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't really like that example because there are a large number of.
No, but I can see your point. It's like the obvious thing to point to would be, well, electricity. Electricity can kill you, so there's a critical risk, and you're like, well, yes, but also there are other parts of their job. One of them is being on the road, and maybe also being a lone worker as well.
100%, and that is one that's really overlooked quite a lot.
Yeah, the lone worker.
Lone workers, people who are out and about.
Yeah.
Another example would be a client who has representatives that go and visit prospective clients.
Yep.
And they've got a large number of these workers who are going out and about. And so there's been a huge exercise, and they've done really well in managing that risk. Because how do you manage that risk? How do you manage and keep track of your staff and make sure that they've got, help on the way if something does go wrong?
Yep.
Especially when that's part of your core business model.
So would be GPS monitoring, perhaps?
Yep.
Yeah. What other
Yeah.
things?
So GPS monitoring, depending on what kind of environments they're going into, having duress alarms, or
Okay. Yep.
thinking about the emergency procedures. If something was to go wrong, how can we get help on the way
Yep.
as soon as possible? Are they trained to do that? Are they trained to de-escalate?
Yep.
And these are all questions that you need to consider. In addition to the driving risk, because they are driving, and as we've just talked about, vehicles are a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a small business.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine I'm owner of a small business, and I can see that there's a change in legislation, potentially coming. I want to get prepared for it. Clearly, engaging with yourself or with EMA's advice line is a good first start. What things could they then also be doing independently?
That's a good question. At the very least, being across your own health and safety and having a review of what you have in place.
Yep.
I like to use the term demonstrable evidence.
Yep.
What can you demonstrate?
Yeah.
Push comes to shove, an accident has happened. What can you actually bring to the table? So your health and safety policy or your manual might say that we train our staff to carry out their tasks safely.
Yep.
Okay, where's the
mean?
training?
Yeah, where's the training?
Can you prove it?
Yeah.
And going back to that critical risk discussion that we have, it can really help to distill down your focus onto those critical risks initially and focus your attention. You can spend a lot of time on discussing slips and trips or manual handling at work.
Yep.
And by the time you get to those really, those big risks, you're spending the same amount of time on them, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Right. But the slips and trips are perhaps more obvious. It's like, well, these do happen more regularly. They're a little bit more obvious for us. You want them to be thinking, yes, do think about those. You need to make sure that you've got ways of mitigating against that. But the big stuff, the big rocks,
100%. Yeah. And making sure that when you are documenting your controls, you are investing a little bit more time and effort in terms of documenting those. So there are a lot of businesses where they have driving as a core function of their business model.
Yep.
And yet they can't actually tell you whether or not their staff are disqualified from driving. And it's a simple check. It's not that hard. You will just make sure that you have that information. Say, yes, all our staff can drive. We've confirmed it by verifying their driver's license.
Yes, they all have a current driver's license. Yeah. Okay.
And so it means that you can feel like you're a little bit more across the management of your risks, because say you've got your 4 or 5 critical risks and you've spent, a solid amount of time on those ones.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. We feel good that we're in the right place. And then when you get to the other ones, which are, perhaps not as dangerous, you're in an office and you've got manual handling written down. Okay, got a couple boxes here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So step 1, identify what your risks are.
100%.
Step 2, your critical, all risks, but in this case, critical risks. Step 2, have a look at how you're managing them, how you're mitigating them.
Mm-hmm.
And step 3, part of step 2 is make sure that you document all of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned driving as a critical risk that people, and also driving in any sort of vehicles, including forklifts, as a critical risk that people don't always think is critical. Can you give us an example of a couple more that people don't realise? Well, actually, no, that would be on your critical risk register.
Mm-hmm. So we can go back to that warehousing example that I was talking about before. So obviously the vehicles and forklifts in particular was unmanaged critical risk. Racking, so they had a lot of their staff working at heights. So up on ladders, and not just 3-step ladders. There were, those mobile ladder platforms
that you can push along and stuff like that.
Yep. So there's an element of working at heights there, which is important. And then they also had hazardous substances. So they had a large store of LPG in the warehouse.
Yep.
So hazardous substance management comes under the Hazardous Substance and New Organisms Act.
Yep.
Obviously, there are requirements that you need to be meeting as part of that, and that could be considered a critical risk.
Okay. Are there critical risks that are how do I put it? They're not within the organisation itself, but they're within the environment that the organisation is involved in. I guess here I'm thinking about, maybe someone who's working in hospitality. Would a seriously drunk patron be considered a critical risk?
That's a good question. That's a real challenge, because where you've got unlawful behaviour.
Okay. Yep.
So if someone is drunk and they assault one of your workers, it's obviously written into the Health and Safety at Work Act. You're not necessarily liable for that action.
Okay.
Doesn't change the fact that it's still a risk for your staff.
Yes, yeah.
So, and this is something that I haven't seen tested in any of the prosecutions with WorkSafe.
Yeah.
But conceivably could be a liability risk. Say, for example, you're a business owner and you supply security services to restaurants and bars.
Yep.
A risk that you ought to reasonably know and be able to manage is the fact that you'll be dealing with unruly patrons,
Right.
And assaults. And so if you are a business owner that doesn't necessarily manage that risk, are you then exposed?
Yeah.
Under the Health and Safety at Work Act?
And the answer would be...
I haven't seen it tested.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
But could well be.
Conceivably, I could see that being a risk,
Yeah.
particularly if it's been raised before. Say,
Yep.
for example, if your staff have raised issues saying, look, I feel like we need de-escalation training.
Yep.
Or self-defense training or something similar, duress alarms, and you hadn't supplied any of that, absolutely, you would be
you'd be
liable.
in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, just to finish off then, so we've got the bill before Parliament. We've also got the Minister who is not putting herself up for re-election.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore we will be getting a new Minister of Health and Safety in the Workplace.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see potentially happening in 6-7 months' time? And I'm not talking about, which party gets into power. It's more just what's going to change in this space.
Oh yeah, look, it's really interesting. It's all up in the air in terms of
Yeah.
what the bill is going to look like. It still has to be debated and has to go through Parliament anyway.
Yep.
So it's
And will that happen before the election?
presumably.
Okay.
I think it's slated to be released in September, but obviously there are delays and there's a lot of stuff going on, so it's hard to tell how that will be. In any sense, the way that I like to look at it is that it's generating a lot of positive discourse.
Yes.
Which is
People are
nice.
talking about stuff.
Yeah, and when you're talking about health and safety, I think that's always good.
Yeah.
The critical risk piece that I've seen some really, really smart people who are, not necessarily in favor of that approach.
Yep.
And I've seen some people supporting that approach, which is fine. I think that it's a useful tool as a health and safety professional when engaging with SMEs or people who, they've got 1,000 different things to worry about, and health and safety is just one of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can kind of cut through some of the noise,
Okay.
get them on board.
But some noise is good.
Yeah.
At least there's discourse involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as long as you got PPE,
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us today, Seb. Really,
That's
really
all right.
appreciate it. That's the end of this episode. Key pointers: work out what your critical risks are, ensure that you are doing things to mitigate them and to manage them, and make sure that you're documenting that. Thank you very much for joining us on the EMA Health and Safety Hub. Until next time, stay safe out there. Bye-bye.